What if the secret to eternal youth was never truly lost? What if, hidden within the sands of Egypt, a ritual existed that could unlock not only vitality but access to a hidden dimension of reality itself? And what if modern quantum science, along with the groundbreaking theories of Jacobo Grinberg, offered the missing link to understand how it works? Stay with me, because what you are about to discover may change the way you see both the ancient past and the very fabric of your mind. Jacobo Grinberg was not just another scientist. He was a pioneer who walked a line few dared to explore, the bridge between mystical traditions and rigorous science. Born in Mexico, he trained as a neurophysiologist, but his passion took him far beyond the laboratory. He studied the human mind, consciousness, and the hidden dimensions of perception. His work pointed to something astonishing, that what we call reality is only a fragment of a much larger, invisible field. He believed this field connects everything, a kind of energetic lattice where thought, matter, and spirit are intertwined. His theory, known as the Syntergic theory, proposed that the brain does not simply produce consciousness, but interacts with this greater energetic field. In other words, what we experience as reality is filtered. We only see part of the whole. But with the right practices, rituals, and states of awareness, we can expand our perception and touch the deeper fabric of existence itself. This idea may sound abstract, but think about the ancient Egyptians. They built temples aligned with the stars. They filled their walls with sacred geometry and codes. They believed in rituals of renewal, resurrection, and eternal youth. For most, these were myths. But what if these practices were designed, very intentionally, to expand perception and tune human beings into this wider field of energy? What if eternal youth was not about physical immortality, but about staying connected to a timeless dimension of consciousness? Jacobo Grinberg believed that ancient traditions around the world were pointing to the same truth. From shamanic rituals in Mexico to yogic practices in India, and even to the mysterious rites of Egypt, all were ways of altering consciousness to open the doorway to the greater field. And here lies the mystery. Grinberg did not just theorize, he investigated, he experimented, and he documented. Then, in 1994, he disappeared. No body, no explanation, just silence. Some say he was silenced because he was too close to revealing truths that could shatter the foundations of how we see reality. Others believe he stepped into the very dimension he described, never to return. In this video, we will explore how the Egyptian ritual of eternal youth can be understood through the lens of quantum science and Grinberg's Syntergic theory. You will learn how vibration, chanting, visualization, and sacred geometry might act as keys to unlock hidden layers of consciousness. We will look at the mysterious overlaps between quantum experiments like the observer effect and ancient teachings that claim thought itself can shape reality, and we will uncover why Grinberg's research matters now more than ever, in a world where science and spirituality are finally beginning to converge. Why should you watch until the end? Because only when we weave together the pieces, Egypt's forgotten rituals, the latest in quantum discoveries, and Grinberg's daring vision, does the picture become clear. Eternal youth may not mean a wrinkle-free face or endless years on Earth. Instead, it may mean living from a state of timeless awareness, a mind aligned with the infinite field that holds the secrets of creation itself. And perhaps by the end of this video, you will see that the power of renewal, vitality, and expanded perception has been within you all along. Welcome to Awakened Synchronicity, where hidden knowledge meets practical awakening. If you are ready to dive deep into the mysteries of the mind, ancient wisdom, and the secrets that connect science with spirit, then you are in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, because the journey we are on is only just beginning. Before we talk about the science behind eternal youth, we need to look at what the ancient Egyptians actually meant by it. Eternal youth was not simply about keeping a body young forever. In Egyptian law, it symbolized rebirth, renewal and alignment with forces beyond the physical world. They saw life as a cycle, where death was not an end, but a doorway. To remain eternally young was to keep the soul fresh, the spirit renewed, and the connection to divine order unbroken. It was less about resisting age and more about tuning into timelessness. The Egyptians were masters of symbolism. Every image, every carving, every ritual carried hidden meaning. The lotus flower, for example, was a symbol of rebirth because it sank beneath the water each night and bloomed again each morning. The scarab beetle rolled the sun across the sky, a symbol of transformation and renewal. When they performed rituals, they were not just praying. They were activating archetypes, forces and energies represented by these symbols. To them, symbols were alive, a kind of language that spoke directly to the deeper layers of reality. But symbols were only one layer. Frequency and sound played an equally powerful role. Egyptian priests used chanting, intonation, and specific tones believed to resonate with the body and the universe. They saw sound as a creative force. The word itself could shape reality. The god Pele was said to have spoken the world into existence. In temples, chants echoed in sacred halls built with perfect acoustics. The vibrations were not random. They were designed to alter the state of consciousness of both priest and participant. When the right sound was combined with intention, it became a bridge to higher states of awareness. Chanting was often combined with breathing practices and with the steady beat of a drum, the rise and fall of a voice, the resonance of a sacred syllable. All these were tools to tune the human mind to a greater frequency. This was not entertainment, it was technology, a spiritual science. The Egyptians believed that by repeating specific sounds or names of gods, the chanter could draw down the energy of those divine forces. In this way, they sought rejuvenation, not just of the body but of the soul. Sacred geometry added yet another layer to these rituals. The Egyptians built temples and pyramids with precise mathematical proportions. These were not just impressive architectural feats, they were energetic instruments. Walls, chambers, and passageways were aligned with celestial bodies, especially the sun and the stars. The Great Pyramid, for example, aligns almost perfectly with true north. To the Egyptians, geometry was a reflection of the cosmic order, what they called Ma'at. To enter a sacred space built on these principles was to step into harmony with the universe itself. Imagine a ritual performed inside such a temple. The initiate stands surrounded by symbols of rebirth carved into stone. The air vibrates with chants, each sound chosen to awaken hidden parts of the mind. The structure itself, built with cosmic geometry, amplifies the energy. Torches flicker, shadows dance on the walls, and the initiate breathes in rhythm, visualizing the renewal of the self. In that moment, eternal youth is not a fantasy, it is an experience of stepping outside of time into the eternal field of life. Alchemy was also part of this tradition. While we often think of alchemy as turning lead into gold, the Egyptians viewed it as transformation of the self. The real gold was the perfected soul. Rituals of eternal youth often carried this alchemical dimension. Oils, perfumes, and sacred resins were used not just for fragrance, but to shift energy. The famous anointing oils were believed to carry vibrational properties, enhancing the state of the initiate. To be anointed was to be renewed, consecrated, reborn. At the center of these practices was the belief that the human being was a microcosm of the cosmos. Just as the sun died and was reborn each day, so too could the soul undergo death and renewal. Eternal youth meant aligning yourself with this cycle consciously. Through ritual, sound, geometry, and symbol, the Egyptians sought to bypass ordinary perception and touch the eternal essence. This is where Jacobo Grinberg's vision becomes so important. He believed that rituals like these were not superstition, but coded ways to interact with the larger energy field of reality. To the Egyptians it was divine order. To Grinberg it was the lattice, the hidden field. Both pointed to the same truth, that by shifting perception, by entering altered states through ritual, humans could reconnect with the timeless and renew their very being. In order to understand why the Egyptian rituals may hold more than symbolic meaning, we first need to step briefly into the strange world of quantum physics. Quantum science is famous for challenging everything we think we know about reality. At the smallest level of existence, particles don't behave like solid objects. They are waves of probability, spread out in potential, until something forces them to take shape. This leads us to one of the most mysterious ideas in all of physics, the observer effect. The observer effect suggests that the very act of observation changes what is being observed. In quantum experiments, particles behave like waves until someone looks at them. Once they are measured, they collapse into a fixed position. It is as if reality itself waits for a conscious witness before deciding how to appear. That is a radical thought. Consciousness in some way seems to influence the physical world. Another key idea is entanglement. Two particles, once linked, remain connected even if they are separated by vast distances. If you change one, the other responds instantly, faster than light could travel. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. To many scientists, it's still a puzzle, but to those exploring consciousness, it looks like proof that everything in the universe is already connected at a deep level. Separation is only an illusion. Then we have the idea of fields. Physics tells us that space is not empty. It is filled with fields, invisible structures that govern how particles move and interact. The electromagnetic field, the gravitational field, quantum fields, all are invisible, yet they shape reality in ways we experience every second. To Jacobo Grinberg, this was not just science. It was confirmation of what ancient traditions had been saying for centuries. There is a hidden matrix of energy and information behind everything we see. Grinberg's Syntergic theory described this hidden reality as a lattice, a continuous energy field connecting all consciousness and matter. He argued that our brain does not create reality but filters it. We are like radios, tuned to only a narrow band of frequencies from a much larger spectrum. What we call the world is only one version of a greater whole. If we could tune ourselves differently, we could access expanded states of perception. In this sense, the observer effect is not just a strange fact of physics, it is proof that consciousness and reality are deeply entwined. Now, if we turn back to Egypt, a new picture begins to form. Their rituals of eternal youth were not just symbolic ceremonies or cultural performances. They were technologies of consciousness, designed to tune the mind to deeper layers of the field. Where science sees waves collapsing into particles, the Egyptians saw divine words shaping matter. Where physics speaks of entanglement, the Egyptians invoked unity with gods and stars. Both are describing the same phenomenon with different languages. The rituals were therefore more than traditions. They were methods to shift vibrational states. Chanting sacred words, for example, was not simply worship. Words were considered creative power. To speak the true name of a god was to summon its presence. Modern science tells us vibration affects matter. Cymatics shows how sound organizes particles into patterns. For the Egyptians, chanting was a direct way to reorganize the field around them, to move from ordinary awareness into a state of renewal. Visualization was another key. Hieroglyphs themselves were not only writing but living images. Rituals often involved visualizing journeys through the underworld, encounters with deities, or rebirth into light. This was mental imagery used with exact purpose. Neuroscience today confirms that visualization activates the same neural circuits as real experience. To the Egyptians, seeing with the inner eye meant shaping reality with intention. They practiced what modern quantum thinkers suggest. Consciousness projects reality. Breathing was also central. In their ceremonies, controlled respiration was not just relaxation, but a way to manipulate energy. Breath was life force, the movement of spirit within the body. Slow, rhythmic breathing aligned the mind and body, creating coherence that allowed entry into altered states. Quantum physics tells us coherence, the alignment of waves, leads to amplification. When waves are in sync, their power multiplies. The Egyptians, through breath, were aligning their inner frequency with cosmic rhythms. And then there was sacred geometry. Temples and pyramids were not built randomly. Their proportions, angles and alignments followed precise mathematics. The flower of life, the golden ratio, and stellar alignments were not aesthetic choices, but energetic codes. When rituals were performed in such spaces, the architecture amplified their effects. In physics terms, the environment was engineered to resonate with universal patterns. Just as a tuning fork vibrates when struck with the right note, the initiate inside these structures vibrated with the cosmos itself. But none of this would work without emotion. The Egyptians knew that rituals had to be charged with feeling. Fear, awe, devotion, joy. These were not side effects, but fuels. Emotion is energy in motion, a frequency that amplifies intention. A chant, spoken without feeling, was hollow. A chant, infused with devotion, vibrated with power. Even today, research shows that emotions shape our physiology and influence the electromagnetic field of the heart. The Egyptians intuited that the heart was not only a physical organ, but the center of consciousness, the seat of truth. Without emotional energy, no ritual could succeed. This is exactly where Grinberg's theory supports the ritual idea. He proposed that our perception is filtered, limited by the brain, but through certain practices, this filter can be weakened, allowing access to the larger field. The Egyptians used chants, symbols, breath, and geometry as keys to this process. In modern language, these were techniques to hack the brain's filter and expand perception. The ritual was not just a story, it was a bridge to the lattice. Grinberg described the lattice as an invisible energetic network connecting all beings and all reality. In his view, synchronicities, those strange, meaningful coincidences, were evidence of this network. Ancient Egyptians experienced the same truth in their own way. For them, synchronicity was divine order, mathat. The ritual aligned the initiate with this cosmic order, giving them access to timeless renewal. Internal youth, in this sense, was stepping into the lattice, living in harmony with the eternal flow. We can find modern parallels that make these ideas less abstract. Meditation, for instance, shows how focused intention changes the brain. Brain scans reveal altered states of consciousness, heightened coherence, and shifts in perception. Sound therapy with gongs or Tibetan bowls uses vibration to restore balance and relaxation, echoing the chants of ancient priests. Experiments with intention, such as studies showing that human focus can influence random number generators, hint that consciousness really does affect physical systems. Even the placebo effect demonstrates how belief and expectation can shape biological reality. Quantum experiments also mirror the ritual concept. In double-slit experiments, particles behave differently depending on whether they are observed. This is not far from an Egyptian priest declaring that to speak, to name, to see, is to share. Entanglement reminds us that connection exists beyond distance, just as rituals linked initiates to gods, stars, and ancestors across time and space. Consider, too, the phenomenon of group meditation or prayer. Studies show that when large groups focus on peace, measurable effects appear in crime rates or violence. This resonates with the idea that when Egyptians gathered in sacred spaces, chanting in unison, they were not just praying, they were altering the field. They were co-creating reality at a collective level. The modern fascination with biofield therapies, energy healing, and quantum consciousness shows that we are circling back to the same truths the Egyptians already embodied. Our laboratories are beginning to describe in technical language what rituals expressed symbolically thousands of years ago. Where Grinberg spoke of the lattice, we now explore unified field theories. Where Egyptians built temples, we now build particle accelerators. Both are ways of touching the hidden order beneath appearances. And through all of this, the same theme emerges. Consciousness is not passive. It is active, creative, and entangled with the very structure of reality. The Egyptians understood it intuitively. Grinberg articulated it scientifically. Quantum physics is slowly confirming it experimentally. When we look at the ritual of eternal youth through this lens, it is not superstition at all. It is a coded practice for interacting with the hidden field, expanding perception and aligning with timeless renewal. This is why their chants, their geometry, their breath, and their symbols matter. This is why emotion was central. This is why Grinberg's theories remain so powerful. Together they reveal that eternal youth is not a myth, but an experience. The state of consciousness tuned to the eternal lattice that underlies all of existence. When we speak of eternal youth in the context of Egyptian ritual and Jacobo Grinberg's ideas, it is important to step away from the literal image of never aging physically. Eternal youth does not mean living forever in the same body or escaping the natural cycles of life. Instead, it points to a state of mental and spiritual rejuvenation where the mind remains fresh, flexible, and deeply connected to the flow of life. The Egyptians understood that the body would change, but the spirit could be renewed endlessly by aligning with cosmic order. In many ways, what they called eternal youth is what we might call vitality of consciousness. It is the ability to meet life with energy, clarity, and a sense of being connected to something beyond time. When this idea is viewed through Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory, eternal youth takes on a new dimension. If our perception is only a fragment of the greater field, then rejuvenation is the expansion of that perception. It is stepping into more of the lattice, touching the eternal space that does not age or decay. In this sense, youth is not about appearance, but about awareness. A young spirit is one that continues to grow, continues to explore, and continues to renew its sense of connection to the greater whole. Yet this pursuit is not without risks. The desire for eternal youth can be twisted by the ego. The ego seeks control, power, and superiority. It might take a ritual of renewal and turn it into a tool of domination or illusion. This has happened many times in history, when sacred knowledge became restricted to elites or distorted into systems of control. Misuse is always a possibility when dealing with practices that influence consciousness. There is also the danger of misunderstanding. If someone takes the rituals too literally, expecting physical immortality, disappointment or delusion may follow. Grinberg himself warned that without proper preparation and grounding, entering altered states of perception can destabilize the mind. Physical limitations are another factor. Our bodies have natural boundaries, and while practices of breath, sound, and visualization can renew energy, they cannot erase the biological reality of aging. The Egyptians may have symbolized eternal youth through their gods and rituals, but they too experienced the passage of time. To confuse symbolic truth with physical permanence is to miss the deeper message. Eternal youth was never about stopping the clock. It was about transcending the clock. So, how might someone explore this idea today in a safe and meaningful way? The first step is to approach with humility and caution. Modern practices inspired by ancient rituals can be powerful, but they must be done gradually and with awareness. Simple chanting is a good starting point. Choosing a sound or word that resonates deeply and repeating it with intention for a few minutes each day can help quiet the mind and shift its frequency. Visualization is another gentle practice. One might imagine the self bathed in light or see the heart as a lotus opening with each breath. Breathing exercises, especially slow and rhythmic patterns, can calm the nervous system and create coherence between mind and body. These practices are not exotic. They are simple, but their simplicity hides great depth. However, safety, is essential. Entering altered states without guidance or grounding can be disorienting. This is why practices should begin with small steps. 2 minutes of chanting, a short visualization, or 10 slow breaths. Over time, these can expand, but only if the practitioner feels stable and clear. It is also important to stay grounded in ordinary life. Eating well, resting, moving the body, and maintaining relationships are all forms of grounding. Rituals should not be escapes from reality, but doorways to enhance it. Jacobo Grinberg often emphasized psychological safety. He studied shamans and mystics, but he also knew the risks of overwhelming the psyche. To him, the expansion of perception was not about forcing open the doors of the mind, but about preparing the mind to receive more of the field. Just as a seed needs soil, water, and sunlight in balance, so too does the mind need balance before it can grow into expanded awareness. Skepticism also needs to be addressed. There are many who argue that all of this is pseudoscience, that there is no proof of rituals creating eternal youth or consciousness affecting reality. From a strict scientific perspective, they are correct. Controlled experiments cannot confirm the Egyptian rituals or Grinberg's lattice. There is no measurable evidence that chanting in a temple grants eternal life. It is important to acknowledge this, because blind belief without discernment can lead to confusion and disappointment. Yet skepticism itself does not erase the experiences people have had. Many traditions around the world, separated by geography and time, describe similar practices and similar outcomes, feelings of renewal, connection, and timeless awareness. While mainstream science may not yet have tools to measure these states, consciousness research is moving closer. Studies on meditation, intention, and brain coherence hint that there is more to the human mind than we currently understand. The placebo effect, dismissed by some, actually shows the power of belief to change biology. Skepticism is healthy, but it should not close the door on exploration. Grinberg's work stands in this middle ground. He did not ask people to accept mystical claims without thought. Instead, he sought to create a scientific framework that could one day explain them. His Syntergic theory was not an answer, but a map, pointing to the possibility that consciousness interacts with a larger field. If science one day expands to confirm this, rituals like those of Egypt may be understood as symbolic languages of interaction with the field. Until then, they remain powerful metaphors, practical tools for inner transformation, and mysteries worth exploring with respect. When we step back and look at all the pieces, a pattern emerges. The Egyptians encoded their knowledge in rituals of renewal, using symbols, sounds, and sacred architecture to align with timeless order. Jacobo Grinberg proposed that reality itself is structured by a hidden lattice, and that perception can expand to touch it. Quantum science reveals that observation and consciousness are not passive, but active players in shaping reality. These three threads weave together into one fabric, eternal youth, as an experience of living in alignment with the eternal field, not as a physical guarantee of immortality. This view helps us move past literal interpretations. The ritual becomes less about magic spells and more about symbolic actions that tune the mind and heart. The chants and breaths, the geometry and images were bridges, ways to bring the human being into resonance with the timeless. Eternal youth, then, is the ability to renew oneself by touching that resonance again and again in every cycle of life. And so, the invitation is not to chase immortality, but to experiment with renewal. A simple practice is enough. Close your eyes, take a few slow breaths, and imagine light entering your body with each inhale. Speak a word that resonates deeply, a sound that feels alive, and let it vibrate in your chest. Do this for 2 minutes, not as superstition, but as exploration. Notice how it changes your state. Write it down in a journal. Observe the small shifts in your perception and energy. This is not about belief. It is about experience. Each person must test these ideas for themselves, carefully and mindfully. The Egyptians left us symbols, Grinberg left us theories, and science leaves us questions. Together they form an invitation to awaken, to renew, to discover what eternal youth truly means. Not in years counted, but in consciousness expanded. Perhaps we already carry the codes of eternal youth, not in hidden temples or secret scrolls, but within our own consciousness, waiting to be remembered. The Egyptians spoke of it through ritual. Jacobo Grinberg described it through science, and quantum physics now whispers the same truth. We are more than what we see, and renewal is always possible when we align with the deeper field of reality. In our next video, we will dive into the deeper practices within Jacobo Grinberg's research, methods he studied that could help us expand perception and connect with the hidden lattice of consciousness. You won't want to miss it. If this journey sparked something in you, give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear these truths, and make sure you subscribe to Awaken Synchronicity so you don't miss the next step in unlocking these ancient and quantum mysteries.